We're going to start with something arguably obnoxious from rabbinical school. I had a friend in rabbinical school who had a master's degree in theology, and he once told me, with only a modicum of disparagement, most people have the theology of a 12-year-old. What did he mean by that? Well, we spend an awful lot of time marinating and stewing and learning and reflecting and acquiring all manner of Jewish tradition and such. And then somewhere along the line, we may have a bar or bat mitzvah. And very frequently, there is a observed phenomena within the Jewish people that the learning seems to drop off precipitously. And so, through no fault of the Jewish people, they did all of this Jewish learning and reflecting and all of that really intensively for a whole bunch of years, all the way to age 12 or 13. And then we took a back seat. We'll let it go for a while. So it's not a fault kind of thing per se, but as I said, it's maybe a little bit obnoxious to offer as a declaration that most people have the theology of a 12-year-old. But it raises to me an interesting question. But before we go on from that particular metaphor of the theology of a bar mitzvah, Howard, do you remember what you thought about God at your bar mitzvah? He had a lot of other things to think about. We're going to give him a pass on that one. It's cool. It's fine. It's fine. It was 78 years ago. We're at an interesting moment in Torah to reflect on what kind of a theology you might have. God forbid I accuse anyone in this room of having the theology of a 12-year-old, but just in case, as a contingency, in case you yourself have not thought a whole lot about God in the past few years, let alone have talked to God in the past many years, depending on when your bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah was and whatever else was on your mind 78 years ago, it's cool, no judgment here. It raises an interesting question about what might you say to God. What might you say to God if you haven't been in contact for a while? The floor is open. Yeah, Jeff.
Well, I did think about it, quite frankly, and I think that I would say, or I do say, maybe internally, thank you for my life and all the gifts that you've given me.
Okay, gratitude. Big theme in Judaism. Lots and lots of gratitude. If you were here starting at 9:30 this morning, the whole thing is framed, very much set off. We give it a little push and off it goes this morning with gratitude. Carol and then Osnat. Not Osnat, sorry, pause. Yeah.
I was going to say the exact thing. Gratitude.
Second vote for gratitude.
Everything good, not that we haven't had bumps in the road along the way, and as you get older, there are more bumps. but just so grateful and thankful for all the goodness that we have.
Another vote for gratitude and refuah shlema to you in that particular bump. Pause.
I would love to say that I would be completely grateful and I would only have good things to say and that I would praise God for everything that God has given us and this beautiful community, but that would be lying because especially in the past year, past months, I've just been full of like anger and questioning, and it would be a lie to say I wouldn't ask him why.
Thank you, Paz. Well spoken. That Paz said, and I'm going to repeat this for those of you on the internet who may not have caught it, that it would be wonderful and lovely to show up with the fullness of heart and gratitude and intentionality and all the wonderful praises, but maybe that's not the entirety of the story. Maybe it has been an anger and frustration and terror-inducing series of months and or years. And so Paz holds that, yeah, if she were to have a conversation with God right now, it might not all be pretty. And not for nothing, neither are all of our prayers for that matter. See under Aleinu if you want to see something that's a little bit gnarly. So I think Paz actually is speaking in terms of the highest tradition of our sages and Rabbanim. Alan.
It occurred to me, and nothing to supplant it, I would have said, as you know, I've been away. Can you help me and tell me where I've been?
Thank you, Alan. So Alan gave voice to the thing I was wondering about. Not that I was going to put it on anyone's doorstep, but Alan has embraced it, so thank you very much. I've been away for a while. Acknowledging that and saying that. It's been a minute. I missed you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I saw a hand over somewhere. Yeah, go ahead. Courage!
Courage to be grateful and to understand.
Okay, courage to be grateful and to understand, to synthesize for 2 seconds, to weave together Paz's understanding with Carol and Jeff's, this idea that maybe it actually takes a certain kind of daring to find gratitude in the moment that we find ourselves. Maybe that's actually a hard thing. And so courage, yeah, go ahead.
And I think that is one of the big tenets to me that's important about Judaism is the sense of personal responsibility. So instead of saying, how come this happened to me, or how come the world is the way it is can you please give me the strength and the guidance to help?
This idea of taking a little bit of responsibility. God, not why do you make a bunch of things that are terrible, but like, God, can you give me the wherewithal to do what I need to in this place? I saw a hand over in this direction. So yes, Osnat.
I think gratitude and beauty and everything, but also it's a change in relationship, I think. It's a change in relationship because we're changing, because the world is changing, because we need strength and ability to deal with our emotions, with our hardships, with what's going on in the world. And I don't think it's always the same.
So thank you, Osnat, for acknowledging a really important piece that my friend Matt was sort of alluding to when he talked about the theology of 12-year-olds, that maybe there is actually an importance to continuing this conversation with God. I was kind of dancing around it, but I appreciate that you named it aloud, that there is actually an importance to that because our relationships change with the world around us, what we take on, what we are called to do, what we understand, what we're obligated to. Those things evolve, they change, they take different shapes. And the idea that we might try and retrofit or superimpose an image of God from our 12-year-old selves into the image of God that I might hold at 40, that may take some work. That may take some retrofitting. That may actually be a really important thing. Vered, and then we're going to go somewhere else.
Our congregation spoke in the past about leaders, selected King David, King Solomon. We have the positive and the negative. Right now in this world, we see friction between our values and some leadership roles. I think that sometimes I hope that our heritage could teach us how to reconcile those gaps between our core values and how history is treating it. Without just saying, because the Judaism say, oh, you'll be punished, and things will be, but until we be punished, we're still punished right now. How it's all going to be evolving, I think this is the question I have, like how do we reconcile? That's my struggle these days. How we reconcile our values of righteous good people, everything that goes on.
I'm grateful for that encapsulation of this moment with a prayer. The gulf between the values that we hold to be sacred and the stuff that not just happens in the world, but the stuff that even we do. And the gulf between those things. And please, God, can you help us narrow that gap just a little bit?
Especially the things that people would say in the community that is our responsible as the Jewish people in this relates to us.
And
we're expected to be the righteous, the chosen. That's right.
And the particular confounding element of when some of those terrible things come from, in fact, fellow Jews. Yeah, that's right. Friends, I'm not going to tell Howard he can't. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, if I had a short time with God, and I wouldn't mess with this stuff, I'd say, can we have a little peace?
Yes.
Amen. And so, you know, like sometimes the things, we really want peace.
Peace.
We want the kids to be able to eat.
Shalom.
We want things like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I had a short time with God, I would say, this is what I want. You know.
Make it count. Howard says, if I got a short time with God, peace. Let there be peace. Let the kids have enough to eat. Yeah. Like, let's keep it simple. Okay? Let's not overcomplicate these things. Thank you. And that actually was where I was at last night. Was simplicity, and a blessing of simplicity for this particular moment, and not overcomplicating it. That takes me to today. It takes us to today. You remember that reading that Shulamit read so magnificently that I'm sure she needed hours and hours and days and months of preparation for, but in fact she did have months and months, years of preparation for, but was Shema. We get the words of Shema and V'ahavta from this week's Torah portion. Shema is a very interesting thing on a historical basis. We know from archaeological findings. First of all, we talked about this before. The prayer wasn't always a thing. We used to make sacrifices to God, offer up like animals or crops or stuff, whatever. And then there's the destruction of the priesthood, destruction of the temple, and slowly over the years and centuries and what have you, we have a paradigm in which for our relationship with God, we are transforming it from one that is offering these material things to one that is offering words and songs, and that is rooted in prayer. This whole thing that we've been dancing around now for this conversation. Prayer. What does it mean to pray? And we know that somewhere around the time of the Babylonian exile, Ezra, Nehemiah, these guys involved in the return, Ezra in particular, instituted this whole idea of, I know, friends, since we're not hanging out at the temple and doing the temple stuff with the priesthood and whatever, why don't we take the Torah and read it aloud? Piece by piece, chunk by chunk, week after week. Interestingly, you could call this some of the beginnings of what we might recognize as prayer. The other piece I wanted to uplift is that piece that Shulamit chanted, Shema. We have archaeological findings of that particular piece from Devarim, from parsha Vaetchanan, from this week, extracted and printed, stamped, carved, whatever, into other materials. We have evidence that goes back to the first few centuries before the Common Era, so negative on the number line now, that Jews were extracting that particular line and then pieces of V'ahavta and writing them down for a different kind of purpose. It wasn't part of the context of chanting the entirety of the Torah in the proper order or what have you. This seemed to have a different purpose. Archaeologically speaking, this has to be one of the original elements of Jews taking text and reading it, saying it, speaking it, understanding it, holding it, and having a relationship with God. It really predates, actually, all of, Masechet Brachot, and here are all the rules to davening and what have you. It predates that by a bunch of centuries. But just this idea that we can extract one piece from the Torah, one line like that, or a few lines, and that might be the basis of a relationship with God. And that's actually where I want to go today, is that was a pretty revolutionary thing, and a shocking thing, and a stunning thing, and it's amazing to have that as archaeological evidence to the genesis of prayer within Jewish community. And so I actually want to make that as an offering to all of you today. There were a bunch of Jews that at one point, we don't necessarily know their names. Maybe it's connected to Ezra the scribe, maybe. But we don't even know necessarily who it was, but there were some Jews that wrote that down, that said, actually, that little piece, and we're talking 2,000 to 2,500 years ago, that this piece that Shulamit just read, the cantor chants every, that we chanted together every week, that there were some Jews that extracted that lifted that out of Torah and said that is part of the way to have a relationship with God through the spoken word and through our intentionality. And so at this Shabbat Nachamu, let me just offer that, 2,500 years sounds like a long time ago, but that as an endeavor, as an enterprise, it's not gone, it's not dead. Yes, you too can have a conversation with God. You too can speak what is on your heart, on your mind, on your soul. Pray 12 bars of improvised blues if it's terrible, or something more triumphant if it's not, some gratitude. That doesn't need to be a gone enterprise. The idea that we have this theology of 12-year-olds, whatever, let's take this Shabbat Nachamu, this moment that takes us out of the destruction of the temples and the bad stuff that happens to Jews. The fact that we get Shema directly in this moment, saying, actually, you can pick up the pieces and build a new relationship with God. You can pick up the pieces and have a new way of understanding God and have a new way of God understanding you. You can find new words, new means of being in relationship with holiness in our own world. That isn't an endeavor that went out of style 2,500 years ago if we're talking about Shema, or 1,500 years ago if we're talking about Masechet Brachot, or I don't know, whenever this thing was like published in the 80s or 70s or whatever. It's a living, breathing thing. And so at this Shabbat Nachamu, Shabbat Vaetchanan, when we're supposed to be comforted, and the Tu B'Av, when we're supposed to be in touch with love, and look, there it is, V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, you shall love God. There's a little bit of a roadmap implanted in there for us. This idea that we can continue to make and remake and discover and to find new words and innovate a relationship with God. Let us not be stuck with the theology of our 12-year-old selves. Let us be fed by it and nourished by it and carried by it. Let us turn and return to it, even if it was 78 years ago, whatever, and we had more important things to think about. But let us continue that conversation. Let that conversation be a living and breathing thing. And if it's been a while for you, if you haven't talked to God in a while, you should drop in and say, hey, you might be surprised at what you hear. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Yeshua.
Yeah, we continue